The lamplight flickered across Benjamin Harper's weathered hands as he hunched over the tarnished belt buckle, his fingers working the polishing cloth in small, methodical circles that had become as natural as breathing over the past 3 years in Red Bluff, California. It was 1878, and the small mining town nestled in the Sacramento Valley had seen better days, much like Benjamin himself. A 32-year-old former ranch foreman who had watched his dreams crumble like dried clay after a devastating drought wiped out his family's cattle operation in Nevada and took his father's life along with it. The modest leather shop Benjamin now operated sat on the corner of Main Street and Cedar, a humble establishment that smelled of oil and leather, and the faint metallic tang of the buckles, spurs, and other hardware he crafted and repaired for the dwindling population of ranchers, miners, and drifters who still called Red Bluff home. His father had taught him the trade as a boy, insisting that a man needed skills beyond roping cattle, and Benjamin had never imagined those lessons would become his sole means of survival. Outside, the October wind rattled the wooden shutters, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and the distant sound of a piano playing at the Silver Dollar Saloon 3 buildings down. Benjamin set down the buckle he had been working on and rubbed his tired eyes, the lamplight casting long shadows across the workbench cluttered with tools, leather scraps, and half-finished projects that seemed to multiply faster than he could complete them. The bell above his shop door chimed, startling him from his thoughts. Benjamin looked up to see a woman standing in the threshold, her dark traveling cloak dusty from the road, her face partially obscured by the hood pulled low against the evening chill. She stepped inside with a hesitant grace, closing the door behind her with a soft click that seemed to echo in the quiet space. "I apologize for the late hour," she said, her voice carrying a gentle refinement that marked her as someone unaccustomed to rough frontier towns. "I saw your light still burning and hoped you might be able to help me." Benjamin stood, brushing leather dust from his worn trousers. "No trouble at all, miss. I keep late hours most nights. What can I do for you?" The woman pushed back her hood, revealing features that caught Benjamin off guard in their unexpected loveliness. She appeared to be in her mid-20s, with auburn hair pinned up in a simple but elegant style, intelligent hazel eyes that held both determination and a shadow of worry, and a dusting of freckles across her nose that suggested she had spent time outdoors despite her refined bearing. "My name is Natalie Turner," she said, reaching into a cloth bag she carried over her shoulder. "I need several leather pieces repaired, and I was told in town that you were the man to see. The stage driver mentioned your skill with detailed work." She produced 3 items and laid them carefully on Benjamin's workbench. A lady's riding glove with a torn seam, a leather-bound journal with a damaged spine, and a small decorative case with a broken clasp. But it was the 4th item she hesitated over before finally placing it down that caught Benjamin's attention, a leather portfolio stamped with gold lettering that read N. "Turner, photographer. You are a photographer?" Benjamin asked, genuine interest lighting his features for the first time in what felt like months. Natalie's expression softened slightly, pride breaking through her initial reserve. "I am. Or rather, I am trying to establish myself as one. I have spent the past year learning the trade in San Francisco, and I have come to Red Bluff hoping to document the remaining mining operations and the people who work them. There is a magazine in Sacramento that has expressed interest in publishing a series on the decline of small mining towns throughout California." Benjamin picked up the portfolio, examining the damaged corner where the leather had been torn and the stitching had come loose. "This is fine work, the original craftsmanship, I mean, made in San Francisco," Yes, by a leatherworker on Market Street. I fear I was careless with it during my journey here. The stage hit a particularly rough patch of road and my trunk came open. Several items were damaged. She paused, worrying her lower lip between her teeth in a gesture that suggested she was weighing whether to say more. I cannot afford to have it look shabby when I approach potential subjects for photographs. First impressions matter considerably in my line of work, and as a woman attempting to establish credibility in a field dominated by men, I must appear professional in every regard. The honesty in her statement, delivered without self-pity but with clear understanding of the obstacles she faced, struck something deep in Benjamin's chest. He had spent the past 3 years feeling sorry for himself, mourning dreams that had died, while this woman stood before him actively pursuing hers despite facing challenges he could barely imagine. "I can repair all of these," he said, setting the portfolio down carefully. "The glove will be simple enough, just needs restitching. The journal will take more time. I will need to replace the spine entirely, but I have some leather that should match nicely. This case here, I can fashion a new clasp stronger than the original. And the portfolio, I will restitch it and reinforce the corners so it will hold up better to travel." Natalie's shoulders relaxed slightly, relief evident in her posture. "That sounds perfect. What would you charge for such work, and how long would it take?" "I am hoping to begin my photography work within the next few days." Benjamin considered, calculating time and materials. "For all 4 pieces, $7. As for timing, if I work through the night, I could have everything ready by tomorrow afternoon. Would that suit your needs?" "Tomorrow afternoon would be wonderful, but I cannot ask you to work through the night on my account. Surely a few extra days would not matter." "It is no hardship," Benjamin said, and realized he meant it. For the first time since he had opened his shop, he felt something beyond grim determination to simply survive another day. This woman's passion for her work had reminded him of how he used to feel about raising horses, the excitement of purpose beyond mere existence. "I often work late anyway. Gives me something to do besides sit in my room at the boarding house counting the cracks in the ceiling." A small smile touched Natalie's lips, transforming her face with unexpected warmth. "Then I will accept your kind offer with gratitude. Should I return tomorrow around midday?" "That would be fine. I will have everything ready." Natalie counted out $3.50 from a small leather purse, placing the coins on the workbench. "As a deposit, I will pay the remainder when I collect my items." "That is not necessary. I trust you are good for it." "I insist," Natalie said firmly. "It is proper business practice." Benjamin accepted the coins, recognizing in her insistence the same pride that had kept him from accepting charity when his circumstances had first turned desperate. "As you wish, Miss Turner." "Thank you, Mr. Harper. You have eased my mind considerably." She pulled her hood back up, preparing to face the October evening. "Might I ask where you would recommend I find lodging in town?" The boarding house across from the general store appeared rather rough. "Mrs. Chen runs a respectable establishment 2 streets over on Walnut," Benjamin said. "Clean rooms, good meals, and she does not tolerate any nonsense from the miners who sometimes get rowdy on paydays. Tell her I sent you. She will treat you fair." "Mrs. Chen," Natalie repeated. "Thank you again, Mr. Harper. I will see you tomorrow." After she left, the shop seemed somehow emptier than it had before her arrival, as though her brief presence had highlighted the solitude Benjamin had grown accustomed to. He looked at the items she had left, touching the portfolio lightly with his fingertips. A photographer. A woman brave enough to pursue such an unconventional profession, traveling alone to rough towns like Red Bluff to document a way of life that was fading even as they spoke. Benjamin pulled his chair closer to the workbench, adjusted the lamp to cast better light, and began working on the riding glove. His fingers moved with practiced precision, threading the needle with waxed cord, pulling each stitch tight and even. As he worked, his mind drifted to the conversation, to the way Natalie's eyes had lit up when speaking of her photography, to the determination in her voice when she insisted on paying a deposit. The glove took less than an hour to repair properly. Benjamin moved on to the small case, examining the broken clasp under the lamplight. The original had been decorative but weak, more suited for sitting on a lady's dresser than surviving the rigors of travel. He selected a stronger clasp from his supplies, one with a more secure catch, and began the process of removing the old hardware and installing the new. As midnight approached, Benjamin found himself working with a focus he had not felt in years. The journal required complete disassembly of the damaged spine, careful measurements to cut new leather strips, and precise tooling to match the original pattern. He worked slowly, methodically, taking pride in each step of the process. By the time the first hints of dawn began lightening the eastern sky, Benjamin had completed the glove, the case, and the journal. Only the portfolio remained, and it required his full attention. The torn corner needed careful trimming and a leather patch to reinforce the damaged area. He selected a piece that matched the original color as closely as possible, cut it to size, and began the painstaking work of stitching it in place with tiny, nearly invisible stitches. As he worked, Benjamin realized he was humming under his breath, an old trail song his father used to sing while working with the horses. When had he last felt this sense of purpose, this satisfaction in work well done for someone who truly needed and appreciated it? The sun was well up by the time he finished, casting golden light through the shop windows. Benjamin held up the portfolio, examining his work critically. The repair was nearly invisible, and the reinforced corners would withstand considerable abuse. He set it aside with the other completed items, and finally allowed himself to feel the exhaustion that had been building through the long night. But instead of heading to the boarding house for sleep, Benjamin found himself cleaning his shop with unusual thoroughness, organizing his workbench, sweeping the floor, even wiping down the windows. He told himself it was simply good business practice, that any customer deserved a tidy establishment, but he knew he was lying to himself. At noon, Benjamin heated water on the small stove in the back room and washed up, changing into a clean shirt he kept at the shop for occasions when he needed to look presentable for a customer. He combed his hair, trimmed his mustache, and laughed at himself for acting like a boy preparing for his first dance. Natalie arrived promptly at 1 o'clock, her appearance transformed from the road-weary traveler of the previous evening. She wore a practical but well-made dress in deep blue, her hair arranged in a neat bun, and she carried herself with confident purpose. But Benjamin noticed the shadows under her eyes that suggested her sleep had been as restless as his absence. "Mr. Harper," she greeted him, her smile warm and genuine. "I confess I half feared you would still be working when I arrived. Finished just after dawn," Benjamin said, gesturing to the items arranged on his clean workbench. "I hope you will find the repairs satisfactory." Natalie approached the workbench and picked up the journal first, turning it over in her hands and examining the new spine. "This is remarkable. I can hardly tell it was ever damaged. That leather there is actually slightly higher quality than the original," Benjamin said. "It should last you considerably longer." She tested the clasp on the small case, opening and closing it several times. "This is much sturdier than before. I appreciate you thinking beyond simple repair." The glove fit her hand perfectly when she tried it on, The repaired seemed smooth and strong. But when she picked up the portfolio, her expression shifted to something deeper than mere satisfaction. "Mr. Harper, this is extraordinary work. The patch here, I can barely see where you joined it, and these corners, they are reinforced so beautifully." She looked up at him, her hazel eyes bright with what might have been tears. "You gave me back more than I brought you. You improved upon what I had." The words hit Benjamin with unexpected force, not because they were flattery but because they were true. He had not simply repaired her belongings. He had taken care with them, improved them, put into them the kind of craftsmanship his father had always insisted upon. For the first time since leaving Nevada, since losing everything, Benjamin had created something rather than simply surviving. "I am glad you are pleased," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. Natalie set down the portfolio and counted out the remaining $3.50, but she also added an extra dollar to the pile. "Please, I insist. The quality of your work merits more than the original price." "That is not necessary." "Perhaps not, but it is deserved." She held his gaze steadily. "I suspect you are in the habit of undervaluing your skills, Mr. Harper." Before Benjamin could respond, the shop door opened and a stocky man in dusty mining clothes entered, bringing with him the smell of earth and sweat. "Harper, I need those saddlebags I brought in last week. Said they would be ready today." "They are in the back, Mr. Patterson." "Let me get them for you." As Benjamin retrieved the saddlebags, he could hear Natalie gathering her repaired items. When he returned, she was preparing to leave, her possessions carefully arranged in her cloth bag. "Thank you again, Mr. Harper," she said formally, but her eyes held warmth. "Your work has helped me more than you might realize." After she left, Benjamin felt the shop's emptiness more acutely than ever before. He completed his transaction with Mr. Patterson, then spent the rest of the afternoon working on routine repairs. But his mind kept drifting to Natalie Turner and her leather portfolio, to the way her face had lit up when examining his craftsmanship, to the suggestion that he had been undervaluing his skills. That evening, as Benjamin ate a solitary dinner at the boarding house where he rented a room, he overheard several miners at the next table discussing the photographer who had arrived in town. How she had spent the afternoon at the Crimson Creek mine trying to convince the owner to let her photograph the operations. Apparently, the mine owner had laughed at the notion of a lady photographer and sent her away without even considering her proposal. Benjamin felt anger rising in his chest, followed by an unfamiliar urge to do something about it. He finished his meal quickly and left the boarding house, walking through the cooling evening air toward Mrs. Chen's establishment. He found the older woman sweeping her front porch. "Evening, Mrs. Chen." "Benjamin Harper, to what do I owe this visit? You need a room." "That boarding house finally get too rough for you?" Benjamin smiled despite his nerves. "No, I am here about one of your guests, Miss Turner, the photographer. I sent her to you yesterday." Mrs. Chen's expression shifted to concern. "She is a good tenant, quiet, respectful." "If someone has been bothering her." "Nothing like that. I heard in town that she was having difficulty getting cooperation for her photography work. I thought perhaps I might be able to help. I know many of the ranchers and businessmen in the area from my work." Mrs. Chen studied him with eyes that seemed to see more than Benjamin was comfortable revealing. "You have taken an interest in Miss Turner." It was not quite a question, but Benjamin felt compelled to answer. "She is trying to do something difficult. I respect that. And she treated my work with appreciation. I would like to return the favor if possible. She is on the back porch, looking at the sunset. You may speak with her, but Benjamin—" Mrs. Chen waited until he met her eyes. "That girl has been hurt before. I can see it in how she holds herself, always ready to defend or retreat. If your intentions are not honorable, walk away now. My intentions are to help her achieve what she came here to do, Benjamin said honestly. Beyond that I cannot say, but I would never deliberately hurt her, Mrs. Chen nodded, satisfied. The back porch, through the house and out the kitchen door. Benjamin found Natalie standing at the porch railing, looking out over the hills that rose beyond Red Bluff, painted gold and orange by the setting sun. She had changed into a simpler dress and let her hair down, and the sight of her silhouetted against the sunset made Benjamin's breath catch. "Miss Turner," she turned quickly, surprise crossing her face. "Mr. Harper, I did not expect to see you again so soon. I heard you had difficulty at the Crimson Creek mine today. I thought I might offer some assistance." Natalie's expression closed slightly, pride warring with pragmatism. News travels quickly in small towns. It does. The mine owner, Cyrus Bradley, is a stubborn man, but I know his son, Martin. We went to school together back in Nevada before my family moved to their ranch. Martin is managing the operations now while his father spends most of his time in Sacramento. If I spoke to Martin, explained your project properly, he might be more receptive. Why would you do that? Natalie asked, studying his face in the fading light. You barely know me. Benjamin leaned against the porch post, considering how to explain what he barely understood himself. Last night, when you spoke about your photography, about what you were trying to accomplish, something shifted in me. I have spent 3 years going through the motions of living without actually caring about any of it. Watching you pursue your dreams with such determination reminded me what it feels like to care about something beyond mere survival. Natalie was quiet for a long moment, the sunset painting her features in warm tones. I was engaged once, she said finally, her voice soft but steady. To a photographer in San Francisco, a man named Richard Caldwell. He was well established, successful, and I was his assistant. He claimed to love me, claimed to appreciate my artistic eye, but when I suggested we might become partners in the business after we married, he laughed. Said I could help with simple tasks, but that serious photography required a man's steady hand and rational mind. She turned back to the sunset, her hands gripping the railing. I broke the engagement, used what little inheritance I had from my mother to purchase my own camera and supplies, spent a year learning everything I could, determined to prove I could succeed on my own merits. But every door I approach seems to close before I can even state my case. Mine owners, ranch foremen, business proprietors, they all see a woman and assume I am wasting their time. Then we will find a door that opens, Benjamin said with a certainty he had not felt in years. Or we will build a new one if necessary. Natalie looked at him, really looked at him, and Benjamin saw hope and fear and longing all tangled together in her expression. Why? Why do you care what happens to a stranger's ambitions? Because your ambitions reminded me I used to have my own. Because watching you fight for your dreams made me realize I gave up on mine too easily. Because your success would prove something important, not just to you but to everyone who has been told they cannot do something because of circumstances beyond their control. The words hung in the air between them, heavier with meaning than Benjamin had intended. Natalie took a step closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. What were your dreams, Mr. Harper? Benjamin. Please call me Benjamin. Then you must call me Natalie. I wanted to breed horses, Benjamin said, the admission coming easier than he expected. Not just any horses, but a line that combined the endurance of mustangs with the strength and temperament of good ranch stock. My father and I had started building a breeding program on our ranch in Nevada. We had 3 excellent mares and a stallion with remarkable qualities. Then the drought came. We lost the horses first, had to sell them for whatever we could get just to buy feed for the cattle. Then we lost the cattle anyway when the water holes dried up completely. My father died that winter, worn down by work and worry. I sold what remained of the ranch to pay his debts and came here to survive. But you still dream of horses, Natalie said gently. I can hear it in your voice. I dream of many things I cannot have. Cannot, or have convinced yourself you cannot? The question was direct, almost challenging, and it sparked something in Benjamin's chest. Perhaps there is not as much difference between those two things as there should be. Natalie smiled then, a real smile that transformed her features. Perhaps we are both guilty of underestimating ourselves, Benjamin Harper. You suggested I had undervalued my request when I offered to pay you for repairs. I suspect you have undervalued yourself far more seriously. Before Benjamin could respond, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. Miss Turner, your supper is ready. Mr. Harper, you are welcome to join us if you have not eaten. I ate at my boarding house, but thank you, Mrs. Chen. Then you will share tea with us after, Mrs. Chen said in a tone that made it clear this was not really a suggestion. Miss Turner and I were discussing Red Bluff's history, and you know many stories I do not. The evening that followed was unlike any Benjamin had experienced since arriving in Red Bluff. He found himself talking about the town's history, the gold rush days that had swelled Red Bluff's population before the easily accessible deposits played out. The way the town had transformed from a boomtown to a quiet agricultural center serving the ranches and farms of the Sacramento Valley. Natalie asked thoughtful questions, her photographer's eye evident in how she wanted to understand not just facts, but the visual character of different eras. Benjamin found himself describing scenes he had only heard about, the tent cities that had once spread along the river. The ornate false fronts merchants had added to simple buildings to attract miners with money to spend. The way time and weather had worn everything down to its essential truth. That is what I want to capture, Natalie said, her face animated with enthusiasm. The essential truth of places and people. Not staged portraits in fancy studios, but real moments, honest representations of how people actually live and work. You would need subjects willing to be photographed in those real moments, Benjamin said. Many people are uncomfortable with cameras, think they steal something from the soul. I know. That is why building trust is so important. If I can photograph even one mining operation or ranch successfully, word will spread. Success breeds success. Then we start with Martin Bradley at the Crimson Creek mine, Benjamin said decisively. I will speak with him tomorrow, explain what you are trying to accomplish. Martin is more progressive than his father, more willing to embrace new ideas. If he agrees, you will have your first subject. You truly believe you can convince him. I believe it is worth trying. At worst, he says no and we move on to the next possibility. Natalie reached across the table and touched Benjamin's hand briefly, a gesture of gratitude that sent warmth through his entire arm. Thank you for believing in this project and in me. Benjamin left Mrs. Chen's boarding house that night feeling more alive than he had in 3 years. The walk back to his own lodgings took him past his shop, and he stopped to look at the simple sign above the door, Harper Leather Goods. The business had kept him fed and housed, but it had never been more than a means of survival. What would it take to make it something more? To build a business that mattered, that did work worth taking pride in. The questions followed Benjamin to his room, keeping him awake as he stared at the ceiling cracks he had counted so many times before. The next morning, Benjamin closed his shop at midday and rode out to the Crimson Creek mine, located about 3 miles east of Red Bluff in the foothills where the valley began its gradual rise toward the Cascade Range. The mine still produced modest amounts of copper and silver, enough to keep 20 men employed, though everyone knew the glory days were long past. Martin Bradley was overseeing a timber delivery when Benjamin arrived, a tall man in his early 30s with his father's sharp features but a more thoughtful demeanor. His face lit up with genuine pleasure when he saw Benjamin approaching. "Ben Harper, as I live and breathe. I heard you had landed in Red Bluff, but have not had occasion to get into town much these days. How long has it been? 5 years. 6, since before I returned to help my father with the ranch." Benjamin dismounted and shook Martin's hand warmly. "I heard you were managing operations here now. Your father finally decided to slow down. More accurately, I convinced him that trying to run mines in 3 different counties while maintaining a residence in Sacramento was going to kill him. He still thinks he is in charge, but I handle the actual operations." Martin gestured toward a small office building. "Come in out of the sun. You look like you have something on your mind beyond a social call." Inside the relative cool of the office, Benjamin accepted a cup of water and got to the point. "There is a photographer in Red Bluff, a woman named Natalie Turner. She is working on a series documenting small mining operations for a magazine in Sacramento. She approached your father about photographing Crimson Creek, and apparently he was not receptive." Martin laughed without humor. "Let me guess. He said something about having no time for silly women with silly notions. I do not know his exact words, but Natalie left without permission to proceed, and you are here to plead her case." Martin studied Benjamin with interest. "Why, what is this photographer to you?" Benjamin considered deflecting, then decided honesty would serve better. "I barely know her, but she is trying to accomplish something difficult in a field that does not welcome women. She has talent and determination, and she deserves a chance to prove herself." "I thought you might be more open-minded than your father." "You thought correctly." Martin leaned back in his chair. "I actually think photographs of the operation could be valuable. We have been considering expanding into deeper shafts, which would require additional investment. Having professional documentation of our current methods might help convince potential investors that we run a serious operation." "When would she want to begin?" Benjamin felt relief wash through him. "As soon as you are willing. Natalie is eager to start work. Have her come out tomorrow morning early. The light is best then, and the men will be starting their shifts. I will let the foreman know she will be here, make sure everyone cooperates." Martin paused. "Ben, I am doing this partially because you asked, but also because I genuinely see the value. But I am curious about your interest in this woman. I have known you since we were boys. You were never one to involve yourself in others' affairs without good reason. She reminded me that there are things worth caring about beyond simple survival," Benjamin said quietly. "I had forgotten that lesson," Martin nodded slowly. "The drought that took your father's ranch, I heard about it. I am sorry I never reached out. I should have. You had your own concerns, but thank you. Will you stay for supper?" "My wife would be delighted to see you, and we have catching up to do." Benjamin hesitated, then shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, but I need to get back to town and let Natalie know the good news. Another time. I will hold you to that." Benjamin rode back to Red Bluff faster than caution warranted, eager to share the news. He found Natalie at Mrs. Chen's boarding house, sitting on the front porch with her camera equipment spread out on a table, carefully cleaning lenses and checking mechanisms. "Benjamin," she said, standing quickly when she saw him approaching. "Did you speak with Martin Bradley?" "I did. He wants you to come to the mine tomorrow morning as early as possible. He is willing to let you photograph the entire operation." Natalie's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes going wide with shock and joy. "Truly," he agreed, "just like that." Well, I may have emphasized the artistic and documentary value of your work, and he saw potential business advantages to having professional photographs. But yes, he agreed, and he seemed genuinely interested in the project. Without warning, Natalie threw her arms around Benjamin in an embrace that was over almost before it began, but left them both standing awkwardly, suddenly aware of their proximity. Natalie stepped back quickly, color rising in her cheeks. "Forgive me, that was inappropriate. I was just so excited." "No need to apologize. I am happy to have helped." "Happy to have helped," Natalie repeated, her voice thick with emotion. "Benjamin, you have given me the opportunity I traveled here hoping to find. This could change everything for me. Then we should make sure you are fully prepared. What do you need for tomorrow?" They spent the next hour discussing logistics, Natalie explaining her equipment and process, Benjamin offering practical suggestions based on his knowledge of mining operations. Mrs. Chen brought them tea and sweet rice cakes, observing their animated conversation with an expression of quiet satisfaction. "I will need to arrive before dawn to catch the light properly," Natalie said, making notes in a small journal. "And I should bring extra plates, more than I think I will need. First impressions matter, and I must appear completely professional and competent." "I could accompany you," Benjamin offered. "Help carry equipment, make introductions, ensure everything goes smoothly." Natalie looked up from her notes, searching his face. "You would do that?" "Give up a day of work at your shop. My shop will still be there tomorrow evening. This opportunity will not. Besides, I would like to see your process, understand what you do. Then I accept with gratitude. Again. You do not need to keep thanking me, Natalie. Perhaps not, but I want to. You have shown me more kindness and support in 2 days than most people showed me in a year in San Francisco. Then San Francisco's loss is Red Bluff's gain." The words were simple, but the way Benjamin said them, the way he held her gaze as he spoke, made them feel like something more. Natalie felt something flutter in her chest, a sensation she had thought Richard Caldwell had killed permanently. That night, Natalie could barely sleep, alternating between excitement about the coming opportunity and awareness of Benjamin's unexpected presence in her life. She had come to Red Bluff focused entirely on her work, determined to succeed or fail on her own merits without relying on anyone. But Benjamin's help felt different from the condescending assistance men had offered before. He supported her goals without trying to control them, believed in her abilities without questioning them, and asked for nothing in return. She rose well before dawn, dressing in her most practical clothing, sturdy boots and a split skirt designed for active work. She loaded her camera equipment carefully, double-checking every item. When she descended to the boarding house's front room, she found Benjamin already waiting, holding 2 cups of coffee and a cloth-wrapped package. "Mrs. Chen made breakfast for us to eat on the way," he said, handing her one of the cups. "We should leave soon if you want to arrive before sunrise." They rode out of Red Bluff in the pre-dawn darkness, Benjamin on his horse and Natalie in a small rented cart with her equipment secured in back. The October morning was cold, their breath visible in the lamplight, but the sky was clear and promised good weather for photography. "Nervous?" Benjamin asked as they traveled. "Terrified," Natalie admitted. "Everything depends on today going well. If I succeed, I have a foundation to build on. If I fail, I have wasted my inheritance and proven every person who doubted me correct. You will not fail. Martin Bradley is a reasonable man, and your talent is evident even to someone like me who knows nothing about photography." "How can you be so certain?" "Because I saw the way your eyes lit up when you talked about your work. That kind of passion does not come from people who lack ability." They arrived at the Crimson Creek mine just as the first pink light began touching the eastern horizon. Martin Bradley met them personally, introducing Natalie to the foreman and explaining that she had full access to photograph whatever she deemed appropriate. Benjamin helped Natalie set up her equipment, following her instructions precisely as she positioned her camera to capture miners arriving for their shift. She worked with focused intensity, her movements efficient and purposeful as she prepared plates, adjusted the camera's settings, and waited for exactly the right moment to expose each image. "Hold very still," she called out to a group of miners. "This will take several seconds." The men froze in position, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and discomfort at being photographed. Natalie counted under her breath, then covered the lens and smiled. "Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen." She moved around the site throughout the morning, photographing the entrance to the mine shaft, the equipment used to haul ore to the surface, the smelting operations, and individual portraits of workers at their tasks. Benjamin watched her work, fascinated by the care she took with each composition, the way she talked to her subjects to put them at ease, the artistic eye evident in how she framed each shot. "You are a natural," he said during a break when Natalie was changing plates. "The way you interact with people, make them comfortable in front of the camera, that is a rare skill." "My mother was an actress before she married my father," Natalie said, carefully storing an exposed plate. "She taught me that everyone has a natural state where they feel most themselves. The trick is creating an environment where they can access that state. For some people, it is when they are working. For others, it is when they are still. You have to read each person individually." "What would my natural state be?" Natalie looked at him thoughtfully. "I am not certain yet." "When you are working with leather, you have focus and pride. But there is something guarded about you, as though you are holding something back. I suspect your most natural state would be when you are doing something you love without reservation, without the weight of past disappointments holding you down." The observation was too perceptive, too close to truths Benjamin barely acknowledged to himself. "You see deeply for someone who has known me only a few days. Photography trains you to see what others miss. Light and shadow, expression and posture, the stories people tell without words." By midday, Natalie had exposed nearly 24 plates, far more than she had hoped for. Martin Bradley expressed genuine interest in seeing the final images, and several of the miners who had been skeptical at first warmed to the process, even joking about becoming famous when her photographs were published. As Benjamin helped Natalie load her equipment back into the cart, Martin pulled him aside. "Your photographer friend is quite talented, and unless I am misreading things entirely, your interest in her extends beyond artistic appreciation." Benjamin could not help but smile. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who has known you since we were boys plotting mischief behind the schoolhouse. I have never seen you look at anyone the way you look at her. I barely know her. Sometimes that is precisely when things are clearest, before complications and history muddy the water. She has been hurt before, engaged to a man who did not value her properly. I would not want to be another in a line of disappointments. Then value her properly and see what happens." Martin clapped Benjamin on the shoulder. "For what it is worth, she looks at you the same way you look at her." The ride back to Red Bluff passed in comfortable conversation, Natalie enthusiastically describing the images she had captured, Benjamin listening with genuine interest and asking questions that showed he understood what she was trying to accomplish. The sun was lowering toward the western horizon when they finally reached Mrs. Chen's boarding house. "I cannot thank you enough for today," Natalie said as Benjamin helped unload her equipment. "Having you there, helping me, believing in what I was doing. It made everything easier. I was happy to help. What happens now with the plates? I need to develop them, which requires a dark space and specific chemicals. Mrs. Chen has agreed to let me use a storage room she has, and I brought all the necessary supplies. With luck, I will have prints ready within a few days. Will you show them to me? I would very much like to see the results. I would be honored. Natalie hesitated, then added, would you have supper with me tomorrow evening, here at Mrs. Chen's, as a proper thank you? You do not need to thank me with supper. I know I do not need to. I would like to, unless you would prefer not to, of course. Benjamin met her eyes, saw the invitation there, the tentative hope, and felt something settle in his chest. I would like that very much. 7 o'clock then. 7 o'clock. Benjamin walked back to his shop feeling lighter than he had in years. He spent the rest of the afternoon and evening working on orders with renewed energy, taking extra care with each piece, remembering what it felt like to take pride in craftsmanship. The next day passed slowly, each hour seeming to stretch endlessly as Benjamin worked on repairs and filled orders. He kept checking the clock on his wall, aware he was being ridiculous, but unable to stop himself. At 6 o'clock, he closed the shop early and returned to his boarding house to clean up properly, changing into his best shirt and pants, even shining his boots with the same care he applied to the buckles and leather goods he crafted. Mrs. Chen greeted him at the door with a knowing smile. Miss Turner is waiting for you on the back porch. Supper will be served in the dining room in 30 minutes, but I thought you might like time to talk first. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Natalie stood at the porch railing again, looking out over the hills, and Benjamin's breath caught at the sight of her. She wore a dress of deep green that brought out the red highlights in her auburn hair, and she had arranged her hair in a loose style that framed her face softly. Benjamin, she said, turning when she heard his footsteps, you are perfectly on time. I learned long ago that punctuality is a sign of respect. I developed the first plates today, Natalie said, excitement evident in her voice. Would you like to see them before supper? Very much. She led him to the small storage room Mrs. Chen had provided, where she had set up a makeshift darkroom. Several prints hung drying on a line strung across the space, and even in the dim light, Benjamin could see their quality. The images captured the Crimson Creek mine in striking detail. The textures of earth and timber, the expressions on miners' faces as they worked, the interplay of light and shadow in the mine entrance. But beyond technical proficiency, the photographs conveyed something deeper, a sense of dignity in hard labor, of men connected to their work and each other. These are remarkable, Benjamin said, studying each image carefully. You have captured not just what the mine looks like, but what it feels like to be there. That is exactly what I was hoping you would say. Natalie stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. These will work for the magazine article, I am certain of it now. And if they are published, other opportunities will follow. This is just the beginning for you. Perhaps. Or perhaps I will face a dozen more closed doors before finding the next open one. But thanks to you, I have proof that I can do this work well. That matters more than you might imagine. They stood in the dim room, surrounded by images of light and shadow, and Benjamin felt the moment stretch and deepen. He turned to face Natalie fully and found her already looking at him, her hazel eyes reflecting the red glow from the darkroom lamp. Natalie, I should tell you something. What is it? When you walked into my shop 3 nights ago, I was just going through motions, existing but not truly living. Then you spoke about your dreams with such passion, such determination despite all the obstacles, and something in me woke up. Something I thought had died with my father's ranch. What woke up? The belief that tomorrow might be better than today, that working towards something matters even when success is uncertain. You gave me that just by being yourself." Natalie reached up and touched his face gently, her fingers soft against his cheek. "You helped me too, Benjamin. You saw my work as valuable without trying to control it or diminish it. You supported my dreams without making them about you. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Benjamin covered her hand with his own, holding it against his face. "I am beginning to understand." The moment hung between them, charged with possibility, and then Natalie rose on her toes and kissed him softly. Benjamin returned the kiss gently, wrapping his arms around her waist, and felt the world shift on its axis. When they finally drew apart, both breathless, Natalie laughed softly. "I should not have done that." "Why not?" "Because now I will want to do it again, and we should probably eat the supper Mrs. Chen has prepared before it gets cold." Benjamin smiled, genuinely happy in a way he had nearly forgotten was possible. "Then we will eat supper, and perhaps we will find time for that second kiss afterward." "That sounds like an excellent plan." The supper was simple but delicious: roasted chicken with vegetables and rice, fresh bread and butter, apple pie for dessert. But Benjamin barely tasted the food, too focused on Natalie across the table, the way Lamplight played across her features, the sound of her laugh when he recounted stories from his youth. They talked for hours after Mrs. Chen cleared the dishes, moving back to the porch where they could speak privately. Benjamin told Natalie about his father's ranch, about the horses they had bred and trained, about watching everything they built turn to dust in the drought. "I felt like I had failed him," Benjamin admitted. "He spent his life building something, and I could not hold it together even for 1 year after he died." "You could not make it rain," Natalie said gently. "The drought was not your failure. Staying alive through it, keeping yourself going when you had every reason to give up, that was your success." "I never thought of it that way." "Because you have been too busy judging yourself by standards no one could meet. You lost everything but built a new skill into a business that supports you. That takes strength, Benjamin. You are generous in your assessment. I am honest in my assessment. The difference is important." Natalie told Benjamin about her mother, an actress who had given up her career to marry Natalie's father, a banker who had insisted his wife's place was in the home. "She died when I was 16, and I always felt she had lost part of herself when she quit the stage. I swore I would never give up my dreams for any man, no matter how much I might care for him." "That is why you broke your engagement." "Yes, Richard wanted a wife who would be satisfied playing assistant while he took credit for the work. I wanted a partner who would value my contributions equally. He could not be that person, so I left." "You made the right choice." "It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I loved him, or thought I did. But I loved myself more, loved my dreams more. Does that make me selfish?" "It makes you honest. Too many people sacrifice what matters for what is easy." The evening grew late, the air cooling with the promise of autumn settling into winter. Finally, reluctantly, Benjamin said he should return to his boarding house and let Natalie get proper rest. "Benjamin," Natalie said as he prepared to leave, "what we are starting here between us, I want you to know that my work will always come first. My photography, my independence, they are not negotiable. I would never ask you to negotiate them." Men say that, then they realize what it actually means. Long hours, travel, putting business before social obligations. It is easier to say you support a woman's ambitions than to live with the reality of them. Benjamin took both her hands in his. "I am not Richard Caldwell. I am not any man who has disappointed you before. I cannot promise I will always understand or that we will never disagree, but I can promise I will never ask you to be less than who you are to make myself more comfortable." Tears shone in Natalie's eyes. I want to believe that. Then believe it. And if I ever fail to live up to that promise, tell me so I can correct course." She kissed him again then, longer and deeper than before, and Benjamin felt himself falling in a way that both terrified and thrilled him. When they finally separated, he was smiling. "That was the second kiss," he said. "It was. Should we establish that as a tradition? 2 kisses per evening. I think we can negotiate for more as circumstances warrant. Then we are learning to compromise already. A good sign." Benjamin walked back to his boarding house in the cool night air, his mind racing with thoughts of Natalie, of possibilities he had not dared imagine even a week before. He had come to Red Bluff to survive, to hide from the pain of loss and failure. But Natalie's presence in his life was forcing him to do more than survive. She was making him want to truly live again. Over the following weeks, Benjamin and Natalie fell into a pattern that felt both natural and thrilling. She continued her photography work, developing contacts with other mine operations and ranches willing to be documented. Benjamin helped where he could, making introductions, providing logistical support, and offering perspective on how to approach various subjects. But beyond their professional collaboration, they were building something more personal. They shared meals several times each week, long conversations that ranged from practical matters to philosophical discussions about art and purpose, and how to live a meaningful life. They took evening walks through Red Bluff, Benjamin pointing out places of historical interest, Natalie seeing them through her photographer's eye. One evening in late October, as they walked along the Sacramento River that flowed past Red Bluff, Natalie stopped and turned to Benjamin with an expression of determination. "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I sent my photographs from the Crimson Creek mine to the magazine in Sacramento along with my article proposal. They responded today." Benjamin felt his stomach tighten with anticipation. "And? They are not only going to publish my work, they want to commission an entire series. 10 articles over the next year, documenting different aspects of California's declining mining industry. The payment would be enough for me to continue my work without worrying about running out of funds." "Natalie, that is wonderful." Benjamin swept her up in his arms, spinning her around as she laughed with joy. "I am so proud of you. There is more. They want the first article to include not just mining operations, but the support industries that have grown up around them. Suppliers, craftsmen, businesses that depend on the mines for their survival." "That makes sense. Tell the complete story." "Benjamin, I want to include your shop in the article, photograph you working, interview you about how your business connects to the mining economy." Benjamin set her down, surprise and something like fear flickering through him. "Why would anyone care about my small leather shop? Because your work matters. Because you represent exactly the kind of skilled craftsman who makes these communities function. Because your story of building a business after losing your ranch demonstrates the resilience these towns require to survive. I am not sure I want to be in a magazine article. I understand if you would prefer not to, but Benjamin, I would like you to consider it. Not for my sake, but for your own. You have spent 3 years minimizing your accomplishments, treating your business as merely a means of survival. Perhaps it is time to acknowledge that what you have built matters." The suggestion made Benjamin uncomfortable in ways he struggled to articulate. Being photographed, being documented as part of Natalie's article, meant acknowledging that his current life had value beyond simply being not quite as good as what he had lost. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, Benjamin lay awake thinking about Natalie's proposal. His shop was successful in a modest way. He had regular customers, steady work, enough income to live decently if not luxuriously. but he had never thought of it as anything more than a fallback position. The thing he did, because he could not do what he really wanted. What if he stopped thinking that way? What if he allowed himself to take pride in his craftsmanship, to see his work as valuable in its own right, rather than simply a poor substitute for breeding horses? The next morning, Benjamin arrived at his shop early and looked at it with fresh eyes. The space was functional but uninspiring, tools and materials organized for efficiency, but without any sense of character. If Natalie was going to photograph his work, perhaps it was time to make the shop reflect the quality of the items he produced. He spent the next 3 days cleaning and reorganizing, building better storage for his leather stock, creating a proper display area for finished goods, even painting the walls a warm color that made the space feel inviting rather than merely utilitarian. He hung examples of his best work on the walls, belt buckles with intricate tooling, saddlebags with precise stitching, bridles that demonstrated both function and artistry. When Natalie stopped by on the 4th day, she looked around in amazement. "Benjamin, what happened here?" "I decided that if you were going to photograph my shop, it should look like a place where craft matters." He gestured to the walls. "And I realized that I do good work. Not the work I dreamed of doing, but good work nonetheless. Perhaps that is enough." Natalie walked slowly around the space, examining the displays, touching various items with the careful appreciation she brought to everything. "This is more than enough. Benjamin, this is wonderful. So you can include it in your article if you still want to." "I very much want to." She turned to face him, her eyes bright. "Thank you for trusting me with this. You have given me so much, Natalie. Support, belief, a reason to care about tomorrow. Letting you photograph my shop is a small thing in comparison." "It is not a small thing. You are letting me document your truth, your life. That is never small." Over the next week, Natalie photographed Benjamin's shop extensively, capturing him working on various projects, the tools of his trade, the finished pieces that demonstrated his skill. She interviewed him about his process, his history, his thoughts on craftsmanship in an era of increasing mechanization. "Many things can be made by machines now," Benjamin said during one of her interviews, "but machines cannot care about quality beyond meeting specifications. They cannot take pride in work well done or adjust their approach based on a specific customer's needs. That is what keeps craftsmen relevant, the human element that machines cannot replicate." Natalie wrote down his words carefully, her expression thoughtful. "You believe craftsmanship will survive industrialization." "I believe there will always be a place for work done with care and skill. The market may shrink, but it will not disappear entirely. People still value quality, even if they are not always willing to pay for it." As November arrived and the weather turned colder, Benjamin and Natalie's relationship deepened from companionship into something more serious. They had not discussed their future explicitly, but both felt the growing certainty that their lives were becoming permanently intertwined. One evening, as they shared supper at Mrs. Chen's boarding house, Natalie said, "The magazine wants me to travel to other mining communities for the remaining articles in the series. Towns like Grass Valley and Nevada City, places where the mines are still producing but showing signs of decline. I would be gone for several weeks at a time." Benjamin felt his chest tighten at the thought of Natalie being away for so long, but he kept his voice steady. "When would you leave?" "After the first article is published, probably mid-December. I would be traveling through the winter months, returning to Red Bluff between trips. That will be difficult travel in winter weather. I know. But this is my opportunity, Benjamin. If this series succeeds, I could establish myself as a serious photographer. Other magazines might commission work. I could build a real career. Then you should go, without hesitation. Natalie studied his face. You truly mean that? I told you I would support your work, and I meant it. Yes, I will miss you terribly, but your dreams matter more than my comfort. What if you came with me? The words came out in a rush, as though Natalie had been holding them back and finally could not contain them any longer. Come with you, as my assistant. You could help carry equipment, make introductions in towns where you have connections, handle the practical details so I can focus on the photography. I could pay you from the magazine's commission. Benjamin felt something expand in his chest, hope and fear tangled together. What about my shop? You could hire someone to manage it while you are gone, or close it temporarily, though that seems a shame given how much work you have put into improving it. Close my shop and travel with you as your assistant. Benjamin tested the idea, trying to understand how he felt about it. Not just my assistant, my partner in the work and in life. If that is something you would want, a partnership. Yes. Equal contribution, equal say in decisions, equal share in whatever success or failure comes. Not you working for me, but us working together. Benjamin stood and walked to the porch railing, looking out at Red Bluff's modest skyline. His shop represented security, the certainty of regular income and a stable life. Traveling with Natalie would mean risk, unpredictability, dependence on the success of her photography career. But his shop also represented settling, accepting less than what he truly wanted because it felt safer than reaching for more. And Natalie was offering him the chance to be part of something meaningful, to help someone he cared deeply about achieve her dreams while perhaps rediscovering his own along the way. I would need to arrange things properly, he said, still facing away from her. Find someone trustworthy to manage the shop in my absence. Ensure my regular customers would be served. That will take time. Of course, I would not ask you to abandon your responsibilities. Benjamin turned to face her. And I would need your promise that if this partnership becomes more burden than benefit, you will tell me honestly. I will not be the person who holds you back from what you could achieve alone. Natalie stood and came to him, taking his hands. Benjamin Harper, you have never held me back from anything. You have pushed me forward, believed in me, supported me in ways I never knew I needed. Having you as my partner would not limit me. It would make everything possible in ways I cannot do alone. Then yes, I will come with you. As your partner in work and in life. They sealed the agreement with a kiss that felt like a promise, like stepping together off a cliff and trusting they would either fly or build wings on the way down. The weeks that followed were consumed with preparation. Benjamin found a young man named Thomas, recently arrived from Oregon and skilled in leatherwork, who agreed to manage the shop in Benjamin's absence for a percentage of the profits. Benjamin spent hours teaching Thomas his methods, introducing him to regular customers, ensuring the business would continue smoothly without him. Natalie finished her article and prepared the photographs for publication, working with the magazine's editor through exchanged letters to refine the text and select the best images. The first article was scheduled to appear in the January issue, with the next installment due in March. In early December, as they finalized their travel plans, Mrs. Chen invited them both to supper and announced she had something important to say. I have watched you two over these past months, she said, her tone both warm and serious. You have built something real together, something based on mutual respect and support. That is rare and valuable. We have been fortunate to find each other, Natalie said, glancing at Benjamin. Fortunate, yes, but also wise. You have both chosen well, Mrs. Chen paused, choosing her words carefully. In Chinese culture, we speak of yu and fen, the principle that some people are connected by invisible threads of destiny. Whether they meet depends on timing and circumstance, but if they do meet, the connection is powerful and enduring. I believe you two share you and Fen. That is a beautiful concept, Benjamin said. It is also a responsibility. Destiny can bring people together, but choosing to honor that connection, to work daily at maintaining it, that is up to the individuals involved. Mrs. Chen looked at them both seriously. You are embarking on a difficult journey, both literally in your travels and figuratively in building a life together. There will be challenges, disagreements, times when the easy path would be to walk away. In those moments, remember what brought you together and why you chose this partnership. We will, Natalie promised. And Mrs. Chen, thank you for everything you have done for me, for providing a safe place when I first arrived, for supporting my work, for encouraging me to trust Benjamin when I was afraid to let anyone close. You needed no encouragement. You simply needed time to recognize what was already clear to those watching. Mrs. Chen smiled. Now, I have a practical gift for your travels. She presented them with a beautifully crafted leather case, large enough to hold folded maps and documents, with sturdy handles and a secure closure. Benjamin's work, she said. He made it weeks ago but left it here for safekeeping. He wanted it to be a surprise. Benjamin looked embarrassed. I thought you would need something to keep your materials organized on the road. Natalie ran her fingers over the tooling on the case's surface, which depicted a camera surrounded by California poppies. You made this for me. When? I have been working on it in the evenings after closing the shop. Mrs. Chen was kind enough to keep it hidden. Tears shone in Natalie's eyes. It is beautiful. The most thoughtful gift I have ever received. Open it, Mrs. Chen suggested. Inside, the case was fitted with pockets and compartments perfectly sized for Natalie's photographic plates, notebooks, and other supplies. Benjamin had lined it with soft leather to protect delicate items and added small loops for securing equipment during travel. You thought of everything, Natalie said softly. Benjamin, this must have taken you hours. It was time well spent. I wanted you to have something that would make your work easier, something that would last. Later that evening, after they had left Mrs. Chen's boarding house and were walking through Red Bluff's quiet streets, Natalie stopped and pulled Benjamin into an alley away from the streetlights. Marry me, she said. Benjamin stared at her, certain he had misheard. What? Marry me? Before we leave on this journey, before we become traveling partners, I want us to be husband and wife. Not because society demands it or because it is proper, but because I love you and I want us to face whatever comes as a united team. Natalie, I should be the one proposing to you. Why? Because you are the man and I am the woman. That is exactly the kind of arbitrary rule I have spent my life fighting against. Benjamin laughed, joy and shock and love all tangled together. You are absolutely right. Yes. Yes, I will marry you, though I should point out that I had been planning to propose next week, and now you have stolen my moment. You were planning to propose. I have been carrying my mother's ring in my pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Though this moment, with you proposing to me in a dark alley, is more perfect than anything I could have planned. You have your mother's ring with you right now. Benjamin pulled the small ring from his pocket, a simple gold band with a tiny sapphire. It was the only thing of value I saved when I had to sell the ranch. I always thought I would give it to someone I loved, someone who would appreciate that it represents my family's history. Natalie held out her left hand, and Benjamin slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had been made for her. We should probably tell people we are getting married before we simply show up as husband and wife, Natalie said, admiring the ring. That would be the conventional approach. When would you like to have the ceremony? As soon as possible. Before we leave for the first research trip. I do not want to travel as merely business partners when we are so much more." They were married 1 week later in a small ceremony at Red Bluff's community church with Mrs. Chen, Martin Bradley and his wife, Thomas from Benjamin's shop, and a handful of other friends in attendance. Natalie wore a simple but elegant dress in cream-colored silk that she had purchased in Sacramento during a day trip to meet with her magazine editor. Benjamin wore a new suit that made him feel stiff and uncomfortable, but Natalie said he looked handsome, and that was all that mattered. The ceremony was brief and traditional, but when they exchanged vows, Benjamin felt the weight and significance of the promises he was making. He was committing not just to love Natalie, but to support her dreams, to be a true partner rather than merely a husband. "I promise to value your ambitions as highly as my own," he said, departing from the traditional script. "To support your work without trying to control it, to be the partner you deserve rather than the one society expects you to have." Natalie's eyes shone with tears as she made her own vows. "I promise to honor the man you are becoming, not just the man you were. To see your worth even when you struggle to see it yourself, to build a life with you based on mutual respect and genuine partnership." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the small congregation erupted in applause. Mrs. Chen had prepared a wedding feast at her boarding house, and they celebrated with food, music, and laughter that lasted well into the evening. Martin Bradley pulled Benjamin aside at one point during the celebration. "You have found something rare, my friend. Do not take it for granted." "I have no intention of taking anything about Natalie for granted." "Good. And Benjamin, I meant what I said months ago. The way you look at her, that is real. But more importantly, the way she looks at you, that is equally real. You have built something together that will last if you both continue to choose it daily." As the evening wound down and guests began departing, Benjamin and Natalie finally found themselves alone in the room Mrs. Chen had prepared for them at the boarding house. It was the same room Natalie had been renting, but Mrs. Chen had decorated it with flowers and candles, transforming it into something special for their wedding night. "How are you feeling?" Benjamin asked, suddenly nervous now that they were alone. "Like I have made the best decision of my life," Natalie said, taking his hands, "and terrified that I will wake up and discover this was all a dream. If it is a dream, we are sharing it." They spent their first night as husband and wife talking as much as anything else, lying together and discussing their hopes for the journey ahead, the work they would do together, the life they were beginning to build. Benjamin told Natalie more about his dreams of breeding horses, how he had never entirely let go of that ambition despite the practical impossibility of pursuing it. "What if you did pursue it?" Natalie asked. "Not now, but eventually. What if we worked together to make enough money that you could start a small breeding program again? That would take years and considerable capital." "So it would take years. We are young, Benjamin. We have time to build toward multiple dreams, not just one." The possibility had not occurred to Benjamin, but hearing Natalie speak, it aloud made it feel suddenly achievable. Not immediately, but someday, as something to work toward. "You would support that. Help me build toward breeding horses even though it has nothing to do with your photography." "Why would I not support your dreams when you have done nothing but support mine? We are partners, Benjamin. Your goals matter as much as mine." They left Red Bluff 3 days after their wedding, traveling north toward Grass Valley with all of Natalie's photography equipment secured in a sturdy wagon Benjamin had purchased specifically for their journey. The December weather was cold but clear, and the roads, while rough, were passable. Their first days of travel established patterns that would serve them throughout their journey. They rose early, traveled until midday, then stop to rest the horses and eat a simple meal. Afternoons were spent traveling farther or, if they reached their destination early, scouting locations for Natalie's photography work. Evenings were devoted to preparing equipment, reviewing notes, and planning the next day's activities. But beyond the practical work, they were learning to be married to each other, navigating the small adjustments and accommodations that any new marriage requires. Benjamin learned that Natalie was not a morning person, despite her profession's demand for early light, that she needed coffee before she could manage coherent conversation. Natalie discovered that Benjamin was meticulous about maintaining their equipment and supplies, that he worried about having backup plans for their backup plans. "You are very organized," she said one evening as he checked their provisions for the third time. "I grew up on a ranch where lack of preparation could mean dead cattle or injured horses. The habit stuck." "I am not criticizing, just observing. It is actually reassuring to travel with someone so thorough." They reached Grass Valley in mid-December, a town larger and more prosperous than Red Bluff due to its still productive gold mines. Natalie spent 2 weeks there photographing mining operations, interviewing miners and mine owners, capturing the images and stories she needed for her second article. Benjamin proved invaluable as her assistant, carrying equipment over rough terrain, managing lighting with reflectors and shields, helping to put subjects at ease with his calm, friendly demeanor. But he contributed more than just physical labor. His questions and observations helped Natalie see aspects of the mining operations she might have otherwise missed. "Look at how the older miners interact with the younger ones," he said one day while they were photographing workers during a shift change. "There is mentorship happening, skills being passed down." That is part of the story too, how knowledge and technique get preserved even as the industry declines. Natalie adjusted her camera to capture the interaction Benjamin had noticed, and the resulting photograph became one of the centerpieces of her second article. It showed an older miner demonstrating proper timber bracing technique to 2 younger men, their faces intent with concentration, the older man's weathered hands guiding theirs. "You have a good eye," she told Benjamin later. "You see story in the same way I do. I see it because you have taught me to look for it." From Grass Valley, they traveled to Nevada City, then to smaller communities scattered through the Sierra Nevada foothills. Each stop brought new subjects, new stories, new challenges. Some mine owners were cooperative, others dismissive or hostile. Some miners were eager to be photographed, others superstitious or shy. Through it all, Benjamin and Natalie worked together with increasing synchronization, anticipating each other's needs, supporting each other through frustrations, and celebrating each other's successes. Their partnership, both professional and personal, deepened with each passing week. In late January, they returned to Red Bluff for a brief respite before continuing their research. The town felt different somehow, smaller and quieter than Benjamin remembered, though it had been less than 2 months since they left. Mrs. Chen welcomed them back with genuine warmth, insisting they stay at her boarding house rather than paying for a hotel. Thomas had managed Benjamin's shop competently in his absence, maintaining the customer base and even attracting some new business. "You built a good foundation," Thomas said when Benjamin visited the shop. "People trust the Harper name for quality work. I have just been maintaining what you established." "You have done more than maintain it," Benjamin said, examining the neat records Thomas had kept. "You have improved the organization and brought in new customers. I am grateful." That evening, Benjamin and Natalie reviewed the work they had done so far and planned the remainder of their research journey. They would need to visit at least 4 more communities to complete the series, with trips scheduled through early summer. How are you feeling about everything? Natalie asked as they prepared for bed in the room Mrs. Chen had given them. About the travel, the work, our partnership. Honestly, I feel more alive than I have in years, more purposeful, like I am finally moving forward instead of just surviving. I feel the same way, and Benjamin, I have been thinking about something. What is it? Your dream of breeding horses. What if we started working toward it now, even in small ways? We could use some of the money from my magazine commissions to purchase a good mare, begin building a foundation. It would not be a full breeding program right away, but it would be a start. Benjamin sat down on the bed, overwhelmed by the suggestion. Natalie, that money is yours. You earned it through your work. It is ours. We are married, partners in everything. Your dreams matter as much as mine, and I want to help you achieve them. But a good breeding mare would cost at least $200, probably more. That is a significant portion of your commission. I know. And I am willing to invest it in our future together. Not just my future or your future, but ours as a couple building a life. Benjamin pulled Natalie into his arms, holding her close. How did I get so lucky? Not luck. You and Fen, remember? Destiny brought us together, and now we are choosing daily to honor that connection. Over the next few days, Benjamin made inquiries among ranchers in the area, looking for quality horses that might be for sale. He found a mare, a 4-year-old with excellent conformation, and a bloodline that included both endurance and strength. The owner was asking $225, more than Benjamin felt comfortable spending of Natalie's money. But when he brought Natalie to see the horse, her eyes lit up with understanding. This is the one, is it not? The foundation you need. She is perfect. Her bloodline, her build, her temperament. With the right stallion, she could produce exceptional foals. But the price is too high. We should keep looking, or we should buy her and begin building your dream right now. They purchased the mare, whom Benjamin named Hope, and arranged for her to be stabled at a ranch outside Red Bluff while they completed their research journey. It was a beginning, a seed planted that might someday grow into the breeding program Benjamin had abandoned years before. In February, they continued their travels, visiting more mining communities throughout Northern California. The work was challenging but rewarding, each article Natalie completed adding to her growing reputation as a serious photographer and journalist. The magazine published her second article in March, and the response exceeded everyone's expectations. Readers wrote letters praising her photography and writing. Other publications expressed interest in commissioning work, and suddenly Natalie found herself in demand rather than constantly struggling for opportunities. This is what we worked for, Benjamin said when she shared the news. You are being recognized for your talent. We are being recognized. Benjamin, every article mentions you as my research partner. Your contributions matter. It was true. The magazine had begun crediting Benjamin Harper as Natalie's research assistant and partner in the field work. While this meant less to Benjamin than it did to Natalie, he could not deny a certain satisfaction in being acknowledged for his contributions. By late spring, they had completed research for all 10 articles in the series. The magazine wanted to publish them through the end of the year, with a possibility of extending the series if reader interest remained high. We did it, Natalie said as they traveled back to Red Bluff in May. We completed the entire project, and it is being received even better than I hoped. You did it. I just helped. No, Benjamin, we did it together. I could not have accomplished any of this without you. Back in Red Bluff, they faced decisions about their future. Benjamin's shop continued to operate successfully under Thomas's management, generating steady income. Natalie had opportunities for more photography work, including commissions from magazines in San Francisco and Sacramento. And they had hope, the mare that represented Benjamin's tentative steps back toward his dream of breeding horses. What do we want our life to look like? Natalie asked one evening as they sat on Mrs. Chen's porch watching the sunset. We have options now. We could keep traveling for your photography work. We could stay in Red Bluff and focus on more local projects. We could move to San Francisco where there are more opportunities. What do you want? Benjamin considered the question carefully. I want to build something lasting, not just work that pays the bills, but work that matters. A leather goods business known for quality craftsmanship. A photography career that documents important stories. A horse breeding program that produces animals people recognize as exceptional, all of it together as partners. That is ambitious. You asked what I wanted, not what seemed most practical. Natalie smiled. Then let us be ambitious together. We will base ourselves in Red Bluff, where the cost of living is lower and we already have connections. You will expand your leather business beyond simple repairs to creating custom pieces. I will continue photography work, both traveling for commissions and documenting local subjects. And we will slowly, steadily build your breeding program, one quality horse at a time. That will take years. Good. We are young and we have time. Let us use it building something meaningful. They spent the summer of 1879 establishing their expanded life in Red Bluff. Benjamin reclaimed full management of his shop from Thomas, who had proven so valuable that Benjamin offered him a permanent position as an employee. With Thomas handling routine repairs, Benjamin had time to focus on custom work, crafting high-quality saddles, bridles, and other tack for discerning customers willing to pay premium prices for superior craftsmanship. Natalie set up a proper photographic studio in Red Bluff, offering portrait services to local families while continuing to pursue documentary work that interested her. She also began teaching basic photography to interested students, recognizing that sharing her knowledge could create both income and a legacy beyond her own work. And together, they worked on building Benjamin's breeding program. Hope produced her first foal in the spring of 1880, a strong colt that showed promise of the qualities Benjamin had been seeking. They purchased a second mare later that year, carefully selected for complementary bloodlines, and began the slow process of establishing a reputation for quality horses. Money was often tight, especially in the early years as they invested heavily in both businesses and the horse program. There were months when they worried about making rent, when they ate simple meals and postponed purchases. But they were building something together, creating a life based on mutual support and shared dreams. By their third anniversary in December 1881, they had achieved a level of stability that would have seemed impossible when they first met. Benjamin's leather shop was producing custom work for customers throughout Northern California, with a reputation for quality that brought in steady commissions. Natalie's photography work had been published in multiple magazines, and her Red Bluff studio had become the preferred choice for families wanting professional portraits. And Hope had produced 2 more foals, each showing the qualities Benjamin had bred for. Word was spreading among ranchers that Harper horses were worth the investment, combining endurance, strength, and excellent temperament. "We did it," Benjamin said on their anniversary as they shared a quiet dinner at Mrs. Chen's boarding house, which had become their traditional celebration location. "We built what we said we would build. We built even more than that," Natalie said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "We built a partnership that works, a marriage based on genuine mutual support. That matters more than any business success." "Speaking of partnerships," Benjamin said, his voice suddenly nervous, I have been thinking about something. What is it? We have been focused on building our businesses and the breeding program, which has been important and necessary. But Natalie, I would like to start thinking about building our family too, if that is something you want. Natalie was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. I was beginning to wonder if you wanted children at all. You never mentioned it. I wanted to wait until we were stable, until you had established your career solidly enough that taking time away would not derail everything you had built. I never wanted you to feel I was asking you to choose between your work and a family. That is exactly the kind of thoughtfulness that made me fall in love with you, Natalie said softly. Yes, Benjamin, I want to have children with you. I want to build a family together while continuing to build our businesses. It will not be easy, but what about our life ever has been? Their son was born in October 1882, a healthy baby boy they named Andrew James Harper. His arrival transformed their lives in ways both challenging and wonderful. Natalie took several months away from her photography work to focus on the baby, but Benjamin and Mrs. Chen helped care for Andrew so Natalie could gradually return to her studio work. I will not give up my career, Natalie said firmly when Andrew was 3 months old, but I will adapt it around our family's needs. I never expected you to give up anything, Benjamin said. We will figure this out together, just like we have figured out everything else. They did figure it out, though not without struggles and adjustments. Benjamin took on more of the child care than was typical for fathers in that era, often strapping Andrew to his back while working in his shop. Natalie scheduled photography sessions around Andrew's needs, sometimes bringing him with her to locations when necessary. Mrs. Chen provided invaluable support, caring for Andrew when both Benjamin and Natalie needed to work. "This is what family does," she said when they tried to thank her. "We help each other, support each other, make success possible through cooperation." As Andrew grew from baby to toddler, Benjamin and Natalie's businesses continued to thrive. Benjamin's reputation for quality leather work spread beyond California, with customers from Nevada and Oregon seeking his custom pieces. Natalie's photography studio became known throughout the region, and she continued to receive commissions for documentary work that interested her. The horse breeding program expanded slowly but successfully. By 1885, they had 5 quality mares and were producing foals that regularly sold for premium prices. Benjamin's dream of creating a recognized bloodline was becoming reality. Their daughter was born in March 1886, a tiny girl with her mother's auburn hair and her father's steady temperament. They named her Catherine Rose Harper, and Andrew, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister. "We have built something remarkable," Natalie said one evening in the summer of 1886, as they sat on the porch of the house they had finally purchased that spring. It was modest but comfortable, with enough land for Benjamin's growing herd of horses and space for Natalie's photography studio. Andrew played in the yard while Benjamin held baby Catherine, and Natalie captured the moment with her camera, a candid shot that would become one of her most treasured images. "We have built everything we said we would build," Benjamin agreed. "Successful businesses, a breeding program, a family. All of it together, as partners. Do you remember the night we met, when I walked into your shop with those damaged leather pieces? I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met, pursuing your dreams despite every obstacle. I was terrified that night. Down to my last bit of money, facing rejection everywhere I turned, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake leaving San Francisco. Then you looked at my work with genuine care and told me you would fix everything by morning. You gave me back more than I brought you. That is what you said about my repairs to your portfolio. It is what you have done for my life, Benjamin. You gave me back my dreams and improved them. You showed me that partnership does not mean compromise or sacrifice, but rather multiplication of what each person can achieve alone. Benjamin shifted Catherine in his arms so he could reach out and take Natalie's hand. You did the same for me. I was polishing buckles by lamplight, going through motions, surviving but not living. You polished away my tarnished dreams and helped me believe I could build something meaningful again. We polished each other's dreams. We still do, every day. The years that followed brought continued growth and occasional challenges. There were hard years when drought affected the horse program, when economic downturns reduced demand for luxury items like custom leather goods and professional photographs. But Benjamin and Natalie faced each challenge together, supporting each other through difficult times and celebrating together during good ones. By 1890, Benjamin's leather shop employed 3 craftsmen besides himself, producing work that was sold throughout the western states. Natalie's photography had been published in magazines across the country, and her Red Bluff studio trained a new generation of photographers, including several other women who followed her pioneering example. The Harper horse breeding program had become recognized as one of the finest in Northern California, producing animals known for their endurance, strength, and exceptional temperament. Ranchers throughout the region sought Harper horses, willing to pay premium prices and wait months or years for the right animal. Andrew, now 8 years old, showed interest in both his father's leather work and the horse program, spending hours in the shop learning basic techniques and helping care for the horses. Catherine, at 4 years old, had inherited her mother's artistic eye, constantly drawing pictures and begging to look through Natalie's camera. In the fall of 1890, a representative from a major San Francisco magazine arrived in Red Bluff, wanting to do a feature article on Natalie's career and her pioneering role as one of California's first successful female photographers. The resulting article, published in early 1891, brought Natalie more recognition than anything she had done before. "They are calling you a groundbreaker," Benjamin said, reading the article aloud to her. "A woman who refused to accept the limitations society placed on her and built a successful career through talent and determination. They should be writing about us," Natalie said, "about how partnership and mutual support make the impossible possible. Perhaps someday someone will write that article, but for now, enjoy this recognition. You have earned it." That spring, as Natalie approached her 40th birthday and Benjamin his 45th, they took time to reflect on everything they had built together over nearly 13 years of marriage. "If you could go back," Benjamin asked one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, "to that night when you walked into my shop with your damaged leather pieces, would you change anything?" Natalie considered the question seriously. "I would change nothing about meeting you or the life we have built together. But I wish I had been less afraid at the beginning, less scarred by past disappointments. I wish I had trusted sooner that you were different from other men I had known. You trusted as quickly as you were able. I never resented your caution. What about you? Would you change anything? I wish I had recognized sooner that losing my father's ranch was not the end of my dreams, but rather a transition to different ones. I wasted 3 years in Red Bluff before you arrived, going through motions without purpose. If I had understood that building a new life was still building something meaningful, perhaps I would have started sooner. But then our timing might have been different. We might not have met when we were both ready for each other. You and Fen," Benjamin said, "destiny brought us together at exactly the right moment. And we chose to honor that connection every day since. That is the part that matters most, the daily choosing." In 1895, When Andrew was 13 and Catherine 9, the family took a trip to San Francisco, their first extended vacation together. They visited the photography studio where Natalie had learned her trade, now run by new owners who treated her with respect, bordering on reverence as a pioneering figure in their field. They walked past the leather shop on Market Street where Natalie's portfolio had originally been made, and Benjamin examined the current proprietor's work with the critical eye of a master craftsman. "Good quality," he said, "but I could do better." Natalie laughed. "You always could. That is why your work is sought after throughout the West." They showed Andrew and Catherine the places where their parents had struggled and dreamed, where Natalie had made her difficult choice to break an engagement and pursue her own path, where Benjamin had purchased supplies when he first arrived in California with nothing but his father's leather working tools and determination to survive. "You both were very brave," Catherine said seriously as they walked through the city. "You could have given up when things were hard, but you did not." "We were not brave alone," Natalie said. "We were brave together. That makes all the difference." By the turn of the century, as the new century arrived with its promise of change and progress, Benjamin and Natalie had been married for 19 years. They were in their 50s now, their children growing toward adulthood, their businesses established and successful. Andrew had decided to focus his career on the horse breeding program, bringing new ideas and energy to expand what Benjamin had started. Catherine showed promise as a photographer, though she insisted she wanted to develop her own style rather than simply following her mother's path. "That is exactly right," Natalie told her. "Find your own voice, your own vision. I will support you in whatever direction your talent takes you." One evening in December 1900, on their 19th wedding anniversary, Benjamin and Natalie returned to Mrs. Chen's boarding house for their traditional celebration dinner. Mrs. Chen, now in her 70s, had reduced her workload but still maintained her establishment with the same meticulous care she always had. 19 years, Mrs. Chen said as she served them their meal. "I knew from the beginning you two had you and Fen, but even I could not have predicted how beautifully your lives would intertwine." "We owe you so much," Natalie said. "You gave me a safe place when I first arrived in Red Bluff. You encouraged me to trust Benjamin when I was afraid. You have been family to us. You made yourselves family to me. That is the great gift of a long life, watching people you care about build something meaningful." After dinner, Benjamin and Natalie walked through Red Bluff streets, familiar now after so many years but still holding the magic of the place where they had found each other. "You remember your first words to me?" Benjamin asked. "I apologize for the late hour. I saw your light still burning and hoped you might be able to help me. And I said it was no trouble, that I kept late hours most nights. You were polishing buckles by lamplight and I thought you looked lonely, tired and lonely and somehow lost. I was all those things. Then you started talking about your photography with such passion, and something in me woke up." "We woke each other up," Natalie said. "You believed in my dreams when I was afraid they were impossible. I helped you see that your life after losing your father's ranch still had meaning and purpose. We polished away each other's tarnished dreams and made them shine again." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, hand in hand, the December night clear and cold around them. "Benjamin, do you feel we have lived a good life?" "I feel we have lived an exceptional life. Not because we became rich or famous, but because we built something real together. A partnership based on genuine respect and support. Businesses that matter. A family we love. Dreams we pursued and achieved. What more could anyone want?" "Nothing," Natalie said. "Absolutely nothing more than what we have created together." As they reached their home, they could see lamplight glowing in the windows. Andrew and Catherine inside doing whatever occupied teenagers on a December evening. The barn where Benjamin's horses were stabled stood solid and well maintained. The workshop where he had trained a new generation of leather craftsmen was locked until morning. Natalie's photography studio, a separate building they had added to their property 5 years earlier, held all her cameras and equipment and the documentation of thousands of lives captured through her lens. "This is what success looks like," Benjamin said, gesturing to encompass everything before them. "Not the success I imagined as a young man, but something better because it is real and lasting and built with someone I love. The dreams we polished together," Natalie said. "More beautiful than the ones we started with because we refined them through shared experience." They stood together in the December cold, watching lamplight glow in their windows, and felt the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Not a life without struggles or setbacks, but a life built on partnership and mutual support, on refusing to accept limitations others tried to impose, on believing that tomorrow could be better than today if two people were willing to work together toward shared goals. Behind them lay nearly 14 years of marriage, decades of building businesses and breeding horses and raising children and creating art. Before them lay whatever years remained, surely holding challenges but also opportunities, setbacks but also successes, all of it to be faced together as they always had. Benjamin pulled Natalie close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, and they stood together looking at the life they had built. A life that began when a woman with tarnished dreams walked into a shop where a man was polishing buckles by lamplight, and they recognized in each other the potential for something neither could achieve alone. "Ready to go inside?" Benjamin asked. "Always," Natalie said. "As long as we are together." They walked toward their home, toward their children and the warm lamplight and the life they had created through choice and effort and daily recommitment to their partnership. Behind them, Red Bluff settled into evening quiet, the small California town that had witnessed their meeting and marriage and the building of their dreams. And if lamplight still flickered in Benjamin's workshop, it no longer illuminated a man going through empty motions, but rather tools waiting to create something meaningful. If Natalie's camera sat ready in her studio, it was not the instrument of a woman fighting for respect, but rather the tool of a recognized artist preparing for her next project. They had polished away each other's tarnish and revealed the brightness beneath, and that brightness would continue to shine through all the years to come. A testament to what two people can build when they truly support each other's dreams while building shared ones together. The lamplight beckoned them home, and they went together as they had always gone, as they always would go, partners in every sense, their dreams refined and polished and made beautiful through the patient work of genuine love.